Hey guys, this is Dan, and today we're going to be doing some blasphemous combinations between conditional formatting and Vlookup. Alright, so pretty much let me tell you about the situation right now. We have a list of purchases that were made on certain dates, and the suppliers they were purchased from. Now that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Now here we have a list of authorized suppliers. There was some mix-up in the purchasing process, and as it turns out, some people actually went ahead and purchased from unauthorized suppliers, all right? So we have to figure out which purchases were made from unauthorized suppliers and, well, just highlight them. Our bosses will then take care of whatever corrective action needs to be done. Okay, guys, so what we were asked to do, and here are the instructions in case that you need them, is we need to figure out a way to paint in red every single purchase that was not authorized. And this is something that is going to be pretty complicated if you're trying to do it with conditional formatting. Okay, so there's two ways to go about this. The first one is the long but simple way, and the second one is short and really hard, all right? Well, not really hard, just requires a couple of leaps of logic. Okay. So the first one, that is actually rather long, implies using a support column, all right? We're going to be doing most of the heavy lifting in a support column that's right next to our table. So I'm going to grab column D and I'm going to insert a new column here. All right, guys, so now that we have the new column, I'm going to write something up here and I'm going to type in a title, and that title is going to say, is it valid or not? Valid or not valid, all right? So that is the name of our new column. As you might have correctly inferred, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be checking out if each supplier is in the list, and if it is in the list, we're going to say it's valid, and if it's not on the list, we're going to say it's not valid, all right? So, pretty simple. Now, it sounds simple, but you want in the end to have valid or not valid. That's going to require a multi-step process, and the first step here is using our favorite formula, Vlookup. So what we're going to be doing is typing in Vlookup, and I'm not going to explain Vlookup as is, because I have like a bunch of other videos where I actually explain Vlookup like from the very beginning, but let's make it easy for newbie friends right here, all right? So lookup value, it's going to be, we're looking for Peter's mortuary, which is right now the first supplier on hand, and the table array is going to be this one, all right? So we're looking for Peter's mortuary right here in this list. Now, let's make sure that the list is fixed. Col index num. The col index num, well, it's column number 1, all right? We're looking in the first column to make sure that it's there. And range lookup, pretty simple. It's just an exact match, all right? We need it to be an exact match from the authorized suppliers. I'm going to press OK, and notice how, since I am already in an Excel table, Vlookup automatically fills itself down, replicates itself all throughout the table. So there is no problem there for me. Now, we have Peter's mortuary right here, and we have, well, pretty much everything else. Notice how when a supplier actually exists in the list of authorized suppliers, then we get the name. When a supplier is not there, then we get the NA error. Now, I can use this to my advantage to get the words valid or not valid painted right here. And it's going to make it, well, that is a leap of logic that we actually need to get my other formulas to work. Notice how if it's valid, then we get the name, and if it's not valid, then we get an error. All right, so I'm going to use a formula called if error, all right? If error, what that formula does is it checks if whatever I'm evaluating, in this case the Vlookup, it checks whether it returns an error or not. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to type equals, between the equals and the V, I'm going to start typing if error, all right? Now, here we go, if error, and then notice how it asks for two arguments, value and value if error. Value is whatever we're going to do the evaluation in. So we're going to evaluate this Vlookup. That's okay. Now, let's go over to the end, and if the Vlookup returns an error, then I'm going to ask it to tell me not valid, all right? Not valid. Now, so either we get the result of the Vlookup or we get not valid. I'm going to press enter on that. And notice how now instead of getting errors, I get not valid, all right? I get not valid. Now, last but definitely not least, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to create a conditional rule, an if, where I'm going to test if this entire formula returns not valid. All right. If it actually returns not valid, then we stick with the not valid. All right. We ask it to return not valid once again. I know this is a very roundabout way to go about things, but it makes it easier on the newbies to understand. All right. And in case I'm going to do a double negative here, but in case it was not valid, then I wanted to return valid. All right. So this is probably a very circuitous way to go about it, but I have what I needed, valid and not valid. All right. And after that, well, now I can do my conditional formatting. I can do a very lazy conditional formatting, or I can do the actual conditional formatting as we were asked to do. Okay, lazy way. It's very simple. I'm just going to select my entire column. I'm going to go over here to conditional formatting, and I'm going to go over to highlight cells rules, and I'm going to tell it text that contains not valid. All right. Notice how everything light up here is not valid. All right. Everything that lighted up here is not valid. But is this really what we were asked for? Probably not. One, we're getting the title also as a not valid. I mean, that's just because it contains the word not valid. And two, well, I can look at it, but then I have to check out what's right next to it, and checked out that this supplier is probably not valid. All right. Now, this is the lazy way. It works. It only requires 2 steps, but I cannot propagate it to the rest of the table. So I'm going to press Ctrl+C on this, undo, and we're back to square one. All right. Now, the other option that I would have would be to do a new rule from scratch. So check it out. How am I going to go about this? Well, I'm going to select B12. It's the first line that contains data in my table. All right. I'm going to leave my titles alone. I'm going to select B12. I'm going to go over to conditional formatting and press new rule. And then once I'm here, I'm going to select use a formula to determine which cells to format. All right. So format values where this formula is true. This is pretty confusing for my classroom students because Excel is expecting here a formula that will either return true or false. If it returns true, then whatever format I have here is going to be applied. And if it returns false or anything else, a number, a text, or whatever, if it returns false, then it's not going to do anything, okay? It's going to do jack. So let's create a formula where, let's create a formula where it returns true in case we wanted to, okay. Let me start again. Let us create a formula where it returns true in case we actually find a not valid. I know this seems like a logical contradiction, but hear me out. If we find not valid here, then that means we have to paint it. And if we want this line to be painted, we need to make sure that it returns true. So I'm going to check if the contents of D12 equals not valid. All right, guys? Now, why am I doing that? Why am I doing D12? Well, it's pretty simple. I've started out in B12, and valid or not valid is in column D. So the 12 comes from starting out right here in this line. It's the first line with data. And the D comes from this being the support column where I have valid or not valid. All right. So I'm now going to add the format. Say font color white and fill red. All right, guys. I'm going to press OK on that. And absolutely nothing happened. We have to go to a second step, which is managing my rules and applying it to the rest of the table. All right. So now I'm going to apply this to the rest of the table and cross my fingers that nothing changed. All right. It doesn't work as such. Why? Because the formula, remember, we told it to check out in D12 whether it was valid or not valid. But when we expanded the formula over to C and D, then we didn't see that, but Excel assumed that we wanted D12 to get changed into E12 and F12, and that's absolutely not what we wanted. So we have to make an absolute reference to column D. All right, guys, we have to make an absolute reference to column D, and we do that by typing in this $sign. I'm going to press OK here, and I'm going to press Apply, and now we get the entire row lit up. Okay, lit up. All right, guys, so we have our rows lit up, and well, that's pretty much it. All right, we did what we came to do. Now, that is the long and easy route. What if we wanted the short and hard route? well, we wouldn't be using a support column. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to undo absolutely everything that I did, clear rules from this entire sheet. Let's assume we never did any work at all. And I'm going to clear out this column. That's it. All right, guys. So we're back to square one. We're back to where we started. We're still going to have to use Vlookup. We're still going to have to use conditional formatting, but I'm going to have to do the entire row, the entire formula within my conditional formatting rule. So again, we start out in the first cell, in the first line with data on my table. I go over here to conditional formatting and I tell it to create a new rule. Now, here I have my dialog box. Come over here to use a formula to determine which cells to format. Now, I have to figure out a way to make a formula that returns true if it didn't find anything out here, all right? If it didn't find anything out here. And I have to use Vlookup. Well, I don't have to, but it would be recommended that I use Vlookup to make that work. All right, so what I'm going to be doing is doing Vlookup is going to be equals to, say, what is it? Vlookup is going to be equals to whatever we find, C12, okay? We're going to look for C12, and we have to make sure that we leave an absolute reference on C, all right? Column C is fixed to make sure that it's always grabbing the supplier in column C, regardless of whether we expanded the rule or not. Okay, we're going to look for that in this particular column, and we're going to make sure that it's a fixed reference. It's fixed reference, all right, then we're good to go. Now, we're going to look for it in column 1, and it's going to be an exact match. All right, guys, we're good to go on that. Now, after that, this Vlookup is not going to return true or false. It's going to return either the name of the supplier or an A. So I'm going to recur to an if error, and I'm going to tell it, well, if error, if it doesn't find, if error, evaluate this function, and if it didn't find anything and it's going to return an error, instead of the error, you bring me back true. Okay, you bring me back true. Now, again, this seems like a contradiction. If you didn't find anything, you're going to return true? Yes, exactly. Why? Because if we return true, then it's going to get painted. So now we go over to a format and select color white and fill red. We press OK, and absolutely nothing happened. Once more, I have to expand my selection to include the entire table. All right, guys. Now, word to a wise, sometimes Excel changes the formula when you expand to a table. Let's see if that's the case. Oh, that wasn't the case. That's very nice of Excel. You'll sometimes have that happen, all right? If you get a result different from the one I'm getting, check your formula. Sometimes Excel did a favor for you and changed the formula to match the new table. All right, I press OK, and there we go, guys. We've highlighted, without a support column, all of the unauthorized suppliers, and well, that's pretty much it. We now have the list of unauthorized suppliers, and they're all highlighted. And you'll notice it's just a matter of using two tools we already know, conditional formatting and Vlookup, and making them work for us, all right? Making them work for us. Now, remember, Excel is pretty simple to learn, but it takes a lifetime to master because of this particular issue with logic leaps. Okay, guys, that's it. If you liked the video, make sure that you smash that subscribe button. It will really help me out. And leave your comment and your likes. Thank you very much.